Turning the vision into a mission. This is Global Mission of Peace with the GoldFish Report on January 18th, 2016. I am Radagast, and I am here with Louisa, our media outreach.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Hello.
We have Steve. Hello, Steve.
Hi, everybody.
Okay, and we have Sanjay, the wonder from down under. Oh.
Good day.
And I'll leave Louisa to introduce our special guest, and of course, the voice to the dragon, the ambassador. Hello, ambassador.
Welcome, everyone.
Well, everybody, we have a very interesting show for you today, or report, actually. Our special guest is Miles Johnston. Miles, welcome to the GoldFish Report. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for inviting me back. I'm greatly honored. Thank you.
We really only touched the surface last time that you joined us. We really had so much to talk about, and I think today what we're going to end up doing is really focusing on something that you know a tremendous amount about from your own research, and that's mind control and how incredibly deep this rabbit hole goes. And before we start, I wanted to ask the ambassador if he had any initial comments or observations he wanted to make before we start getting into it very deep, because the rabbit hole goes quite deep, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, and I think that talk about mind control is I think is a very important thing, because like I was making a joke last week when I stated that some people, I don't know why we would waste so much time doing mind control on very small minds, but in reality I think that it's important that to realize that the mind control starts at the kindergarten level, and if we're going to be able to get ourselves out from this tyranny, we need to make people aware of what's going on around the world. And also, as I was saying on Friday there, that when we were talking about the Iranian situation, I stated that rest assured that they will do their best to counter that thing, the first thing that happens, and that was exactly what happened. As soon as the sanctions were lifted, then basically they made up new sanctions, so they don't need to pay back the money that they owe, that they've been stealing from the Iranian people, and they want to continue to make the Iranian people suffer based on their negativities and their bad financial handlement of their countries. And also today, the French leader was coming out and admitting that this country is bankrupt and that they need to do some shift and changes. And I think it's time for America to do the same thing, instead of imposing tyranny sanctions, which is an act of war on innocent populations, because they are the ones suffering, not the leaders, because the leaders, they will still have their money and they will still have their medicines and they will still have everything that they need, but it's the normal public, the normal people on the streets of Iran that's not going to get their medicines, they're not going to get their going to die in cancer, die all that, but different type of things, medical conditions, because some elite people, banksters, doesn't want to give back the money that they owe to Iranian people. So let's pray for sanity when it comes to that, and with that I will leave the floor to mind control. Thank you very much, Miles. Welcome.
Welcome.
Miles, your last basis project, or not your last one, but one of them, the Basis 53, where you had interviewed Sergeant Daniel McMullen, was just phenomenal, as I was mentioning before we started, where you guys are really connecting the dots in ways that most people just, it's really mind-boggling. I mean, everything from, the smart dust, the chemtrails, to the HAARP, CERN, how the plasma interacts with the nanobots that we inhale, that everybody possesses in their body, the EMF. Can you put this into perspective for us? I know this is a big question, but this is what we're here for. So can you give us your best and explain to us, where does it begin? Does it begin with the chemtrails, and how does or does it begin on even a more nefarious level that we can't see? Something we can't even see and imagine.
I think what we're dealing with is something which is much more serious than these peripheral flowers, if you could these are sort of peripheral symptoms of a root cause, and what a root seems to be controlling something which is the source of where we all come from. As living beings, if you take a plant or if you take a human or beings, we have a soul or soul energy or whatever you want to call it. This seems to be accessing the root source of where that comes from. In other words, it's a bit like the 2001 movie where the astronaut is taking out the bits from HAL, the computer, and the computer starts to lose consciousness and then goes back to his childhood. Something's accessing at source.
Are you saying that this is our life source energy?
I think what we've got is something which is a completely alien energetic intelligence, which is accessing the root core of the entire consciousness of all perceptive existence.
Okay, so
or you could say we've got bugs in the circuit boards of the matrix.
Okay, so let's try to break this down a little bit for our viewers. And most of our viewers are familiar with you, which is why I didn't go into a lengthy explanation of your background, because they can look that up in our previous interview and any of your other basis projects. But also, there's so much to talk about. This is the whole part of the whole transhumanism project, though, isn't it? I mean, is this the goal?
The transhumanism project essentially is to delete all existing individual civilizations and individual life forms on this planet, so that one very low level life form can sustain its existence at the expense of everything else.
What can we do, Miles? What can we do about this? This is so it's very complicated, very high.
I mean, at one level, we've got all different races. We've got this lot don't like that lot, and they're all fighting each other, and one lot's going to do this to this lot. And you have the geopolitics of everything, and you have all this invasion of Europe, and they're all panicking, and everybody's screaming and running around in circles. That's because somebody else has made that happen, and that something else is simply an instrument of another. I've got a drill here. I've got two drills. We can do this in stereo. That's my inverted sarcasm. There's been too many sightings of these spiders, and these spiders delete themselves from our perceptive existence, and that means something's communicating with some kind of intelligent cognitive device. Now, what's happening is that the 2045 agenda is designed to keep those who dare not reincarnate in a stable existence in this domain that we call our existence. That's the cyborg agenda. That's the transhumanization agenda.
So you mean on the etheric level, we have they're manipulating all of them?
No, it's much deeper than that. It's the actual, wherever you want to call our soul. And I don't like, it's the thing about using words is that they maybe trigger different things to different people.
Sure.
What the essence of what we call life, which inhabits a body, which then disappears and goes somewhere else. One of the key things, looking back on what Erwin was saying, is that they had control over the human life-death cycle. Mm-hmm. And they had the ability to control, to take an individual and experience death, go to different realities in existence and perceive them using the DNA of the people that were in those other realities and existences, which means you can't jump to those different bodies unless you've got a singing signature or DNA structure for you to inhabit.
That's interesting. Let me see. Steve, I think he has a question. He has his hand up. Steve, did you want to ask Miles a question?
Yes. Hi, Miles. Look, it seems to correlate, what you're saying seems to correlate with Simon Parkes and other sources that I've seen and come across. where do you mainly source your information? How have you correlated this yourself, or come to an understanding or a belief in this?
Well, I'm coming up with different sources which are effectively saying the same thing. Now,
please just give us a brief summary.
So, well, for instance, Simon is talking about the Hadron Collider, and he was talking about it, and in the most recent past, it was a Hadron Collider, and he publicly announced that, and there were newspaper people there. That was done at the UFO Academy in, I think, September. Before it, no, it was after it, and he described what he was doing publicly. That was actually published in the Daily Express newspaper, and so that hit one level. But this was already discussed by a healer who I think's now passed away, called Chris Thomas, something like almost 10 years ago. And he was claiming that he was accessing the Akashic. He was directly accessing the Akashic, and what he describes as the Velon, which is a collective term for the Hathor. Two of the subgroups of that are the Hathor and the Anunnaki. I think the Nephilim are in there. And they were using the Hadron Collider as a mechanism to cut humanity off from source and provide some kind of gateway to allow more of these people in. Now, the point is, he was doing it, not the Velon collective. What they were doing was, they weren't creating a wormhole so physical spaceships could come in. What they seemed to be doing was, they were energetically targeting the fundamental life force of the solar system itself. So its normal protective layers in whatever dimensions it lives in would collapse, and then that would allow an infection or these other beings to come in, most of whom had already gone away and passed on. So there's a number of people coming up with similar stories where there is some kind of hostile off-world race of beings which wish to take over this planet, make it and make it their own at the expense of everything else. Now, there's different signatures of that basic story. You got an artificial intelligence arriving into the black goo. You got the Anunnaki, the Nephilim, taking over different races, human races, and masking their existence within the human bioform. And Simon Parkes is the most recent of that. And then after that, we had Mick Bolan, who was discussing his attack on the Hadron Collider. But the thing is, the Hadron Collider whole thing was dismissed. Nothing happened. But it just happens that when Simon Parkes declared that he was going to do what he was doing, the Hadron Collider was going to start up, I think, at 8 o'clock that night. And, it didn't. They started earlier, but they were still able to cause problems to that. Now, what happened was, there was a widespread backward search of ISP address accessing every server in Europe. And they were desperately trying to find out how this attack happened, which means there was an attack, there was an effect on the Hadron Collider in September, and they were trying to do something about it, to the extent that they basically shut down the internet. They didn't shut it down, but what they were doing, that because they were looking to who had been searching where and what ISPs were trying to get in through whatever, not ISP, but IP addresses were trying to get from where, how they were tracking them. We're desperately trying to backtrack, or what we do in telecommunications, to a cold trace. And because they were doing that so aggressively, it meant that no other internet traffic could actually work properly, so it effectively shut down the internet in different places for about 3 days, which means they were really searching to find something. But what they were looking for was the wrong thing, because it wasn't coming in through the internet. It wasn't sort of some bug in the software.
Right, and this is where Simon said that he needed to address this in an unconventional manner. So he did it through mass consciousness, through meditation. So that's why they couldn't find it. Is that right?
I would suggest, knowing Simon with his clever words, I would suggest it is not what you just said. Right? So I think we'd probably leave it at that.
All right. So
the reason why I say that is because Joe Soap would consider what your idea of unconventional means isn't necessarily what his idea of unconventional means is. I would suggest that our idea of conventional means would be exactly what you just said, Louis, what you just said. Therefore, it must be something else. And if I know Simon, that's probably the case. That doesn't mean I know what it is. But in other words, he's playing his cards and he's telling you he's playing his cards. Therefore, he's already got you on his side of the game.
Well, what's his side of the game then?
He's already checkmated. See, that's the problem. And we're already we're thinking that, we still have a move ready.
You've got to understand with Simon is that he is doing something really courageous. He's facing down his trauma, right? He's engaged in something which he's managed to construct a number of understandable scenarios about so he can deal with it. Now, so what he's doing is he's drawing in the enemy to see what they do. And by doing that, it's a very dangerous thing to do. But by doing that, you'll understand what the modus operandi of the enemy is.
He's flushing them out then.
Right. Right.
No,
isn't that what Earth was for, though? I mean, wasn't Earth supposed to be a trap? Isn't that what Earth is intended to be? It was supposed to be a trap for the dark, ultimately, in order to contain them and confine them into this region of the solar system, in order to destroy or dispose of them or send them back to source or whatever.
Well, then we are the trap for them.
Yes, indeed. That's what I think what part of the plan was. No.
Yeah, we're the bait.
Exactly.
And that's actually what's happening. I've invited somebody because we worked out that what James Casbolt was primarily his job was to blow the whistle on the so-called elite. Again, I don't like using that term, but what their practices were, and that was what he was supposed to do, and that's what he did do.
It would appear, Miles, may I say, it would appear that every single, Louisa, you're a fan, every single entity in the universe has got an agenda. They've got their own interests. So everybody's serving their own interests. And so basically, what are they gaining? What do you think they're gaining from us? Is it gaining territory? Is it gaining energy from us? What's the agenda there?
The one thing they don't seem to have is the creation ability, or they don't have a good, I mean, this is what McBolan was talking about, the metagene thing, where we have an ability to create, to manifest.
Right.
They're terrified of, or they seemingly are terrified of any state of disorder. It's a psychosis. If that blade of grass is moving slightly to the left, stamp on it, push it to the right. It's some kind of pathological, everything must be in a state of order. Now, that basically means a static state of entropy. Static states. Now, you can't have that. But there's something demands that must happen. Now, if you have that, all the dynamics of the structure of everything will collapse because everything's oscillating, it's moving, it's doing something. So if that is what something demands, there must be a reason for that. And if you wish to...
You're talking about free choice.
I'm talking about the ability of a leaf to grow on a tree in the way the leaf wants to grow on the tree.
Natural order.
This stuff seems to demand absolute and total control over every single random or seemingly random impulse in existence.
Is that because it's non-organic and because it doesn't have a consciousness like we do? It's a different consciousness?
I think we have to think the problem through a little bit more because consciousness, everything that grows, it responds, it moves. You don't have every tree growing up exactly the same way. It doesn't. All life expresses itself slightly different.
Individuality. Yeah.
Yes, and they cannot tolerate that. This thing cannot tolerate. It has to have control. Oh God. I knew there was going to be a phone call.
It's them.
Take the batteries out.
This is a good time to take a little break. The ambassador.
Miles, I have a question for you. You are aware of a sky dreadnought?
I'm aware of things like that, but I'm not entirely convinced they are what they have been told us. They've told us what they are.
Because the funny thing is this way, I saw it over many different locations around the world, and at the time when it was shown up during a start of a Ukrainian situation, the American government went out and said it's their technology. And today I was watching the Sky Dreadnought flying over the walls in China, where the new collider is that they're building, and it was flying over there very openly, very well recorded. And I was still wondering if America still will hold the assumption that this is their technology. If it is, that either means that they had consent of the Chinese to fly the military craft to China, or basically this is an act of war, if it's America controlling this particular entity. What do you think?
I think the Americans are foolish to claim it's their technology. They're going to be caught with their trousers down on this. The Americans have made far too many mistakes. They rely far too much on brute force, not enough on detail. And if they're claiming that, I think it's not that they're not in charge of it. That's my view on it.
What about this Black Knight satellite? How does this, is this for real? I mean, I think I saw a video of the Challenger space shuttle that was actually, I think, had a mission. From some of the research I found, that this was what happened to the Challenger, that it was trying to take out this Black Knight satellite. And in fact, they destroyed the Challenger while it was in orbit, in fact, not when it came into our...
well, we have to find out how high the Black Knight satellite allegedly gets to. Because the shuttle maximum, I think they could do with maximum would be about 1,000 miles. I think they had trouble dealing with that when they had to do the repairs again of the telescope.
Who's controlling this?
I don't know about the Black Knight satellite.
Do you know who's controlling it or where it came from? Or
I'm not convinced that the Black Knight satellite is something which it's claimed to be. It has a vacuous sensation about it.
I see. And so, well, what about this grid, this electromagnetic grid that's around the planet? I mean, how much of what role is that playing actually?
Well, it's interesting that the photograph that the British astronaut took, which from the space station, had a cloud formation over the northwest of England, which was at the time suffering incredible floods. That satellite, that cloud formation had an extremely densely packed, very, very fine grid system in it. Now, I don't know where that grid system was transmitted from. I have my own opinions that it's probably some kind of scalar weapon of a very high field intensity, which was used to cause the weather issues in the north of England. But while I don't have enough information on that, the main thing is that this was a photograph released by a British astronaut on the International Space Station, which was flying over England, which was having severe floods. And even the locals have realized it's been by design, because the relevant reservoirs, which could have been drained to allow that rush of water to be delayed, weren't drained. And as in a couple of years ago, the Somerset levels in England, which weren't dredged, the locals knew that would then lead to flooding, which means that's all a strategic action by the relevant authorities in England to cause those floods by design. When you then have a British astronaut take a picture of that event in plain sight, which has got a grid system in it, they're whistleblowing. and the whistle blowing that there is some kind of grid force field. Now that's relatively low in the lower atmosphere, but that means they are trying to tell us something, and they're trying to tell us something with a gun to their head.
Yeah, exactly.
We have to try and outthink that and see what the problem is, and then not necessarily blow the whistle on it.
So HAARP is part of this, right? I mean, HAARP is bouncing radio waves off the ionosphere back to Earth, and it seems
I think HAARP is a whipping boy for a number of other technologies. I'm not convinced that HAARP is doing all the things that it's claimed to be doing. Okay,
but is it not, I mean, affecting our, like on a sub-vibrational reality, is it not changing that? I mean, I think David Icke was talking about this, because I think what you're talking about is when you're talking about that this is affecting us at like our source, it's almost like we're all vibration, really, we're all energy. So it must have some kind of, it must be affecting the phase, causing this dissonance in our vibration.
The thing is that we need to get scientists, and we need to get young minds trained properly in the full aspects of the physics and the mathematics of engineering science in the electrical energy field. For instance, using the term electromagnetic is immediately the wrong term. We've got information, we've got dynamic electrical fields in standing stones in England, and those standing stones are also now retransmitting the negative effects of Wi-Fi and cell phone frequencies. And it seems that the energetic system itself, the Earth's energetic system, is being deliberately engineered for nefarious purposes. That's to say, the ley line system, whatever is driving that, is and has been for quite some time specifically engineered on an old scale. That older technology is being reactivated for nefarious purposes. So when we talk about HAARP, we're talking about HAARP is look here when we need to be looking there.
Okay, so it's a distraction. Steve, did you want to ask? I know you have your hand up. Did you have? And I want to go around to everybody else on the panel too for questions soon. Did you have a question?
Yeah, sure. Look, so basically, what you're saying is that it's basically an invasion, and are we all screwed?
If we don't wake up, we're screwed.
So that means the invasion is for every single power group on the planet. Nobody is not affected.
If you are made of physical corporeal flesh, and you rely on breathing air in a temperate climate, and eating plants and eating fish and living off the dynamic state of living life, the balanced state of living organisms on this planet, you're screwed.
So we have an invading species, an invading consciousness that wants to take over every living thing on the planet that's organic, and
everything. The energy grid is symbiotic.
And we're basically asleep to it.
We are being toxified, so we feel happy as we're eating.
Yeah, isn't this though? This is to destabilize the body's own computer, okay, right? So it can't really have the truth vibration though is really what they fear, isn't it? I mean, this frequency of truth and awareness. Once we wake up to, there has to be something to be said for the power of our collective consciousness.
Yes,
as a collective.
That's what they're accessing.
Right.
That's what the technology and the Hadron with the kind of force fields they're dealing with. They're accessing, they're gating in. One of the basic things about a transformer in electrical engineering is you have an inductive loop, which has got a force field flying around it with a high rate of change. And that can induce into a much bigger system from a much smaller system. So that means that you've got the dynamic force fields and energetics of the planet, and it's living whatever that is, and you again we get a black hole to the center of the Earth or a big lump of molten iron. It really doesn't make much difference in terms of concept, but it means that you can use a relatively small experiment to gate in and cause a much greater effect on a planetary level. Now all the other planets are connected by force fields and energies because the dynamic this relatively stable state of the solar system we're living in, and the other solar systems which are related to this solar system in other dimensions. Which means if you start accessing at a small point and you keep kicking slightly, just boom, 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 you can then push that in a resonant state and has a huge effect on collapsing the relevant protective fields of that life force.
Miles, then by deductive reasoning, we're really saying that the only hope we have to overcome this is really for all of us to kind of unite in a love vibration. I think that, because that is the highest frequency, is it not? And the most powerful force in the universe is love, isn't it?
We have to have a state where we have different people who are specialized in specific areas doing the best they can in those specific areas. For people to have a loving, healing, and dampening effect on the hate wave that they're trying to produce. They seem to want us to all hate each other and have prejudices and all those sorts of things between all the relevant differences and diversity of this beautiful place we've got. I don't think we've been invaded. I think what's happened is when we arrived here, something else got left behind and it can't survive anymore. And it's time for that group to leave, to die.
Well, what you're saying is that, okay, so it's a little bit obvious then. We can maybe figure a strategy out when we realize what they're attacking. So if they're trying to suppress our energy and they're trying to keep us in a low vibration, what we need to be doing is the opposite. We need to counteract that. We might not be able to
no, it's as with many wise religions or very many wise forms of expression. You don't stop a bullet by putting your hand up in front of it. You deflect it. Or you use a mirror device and it goes back to the source of its. I mean, that's a scalar weapon that does that. You can do that. Scalar weapons can be thought intention weapons. What it seems to be happening is it seems to be accessing our consciousness and getting us to engineer ourselves out of our own existence. So it does very little.
That's crazy. Now, the ambassador is an expert in martial arts, and he's an expert in energy and using energy. He knows about deflection, and I wanted to ask the ambassador. This is really, something that he knows a lot about. When you're dealing with energy and deflecting it, it's a brilliant strategy that you said. And if the ambassador wants to make a comment on this would be great. Okay, so maybe counteracting it is the right approach, but in terms of a strategy, maybe the ambassador wants to add to that.
Yeah, I think that deflection is a better word used than actually blocking it, because blocking huge force, it would be like force against force. It's better to embrace it and deflect it away from you. Understand? And that's the way you need to do it. Instead, you have to allow all form of attacks to be deflected away from you, and not to engage it.
Yeah, I very strongly agree with the term embrace. We could be dealing with a learning intelligence which has never experienced love, never experienced happiness, never experienced a welcome. It's always been treated as the bad guy. It's like the barking dog. It's had a trauma in its life and it keeps biting people and barking at everybody. But if you somehow embrace it without the dog, eating your head off, then you can maybe embrace something which needs help. Maybe it's a cry for help from something. But at the moment, it's going to kill us. So we need to understand, and I think in some respects what Simon Parkes did by bringing this thing in, it gives you understanding. So I think embracing, insofar that you can embrace something that's totally lethal and whatever, is a better way of trying to do that. But you don't embrace fire, you have to put it out. It's going to burn you down, but at the same time, fire can warm you and keep you alive.
So what's your suggestion? What do we need to do as humanity to deal with this? You mentioned a professional group.
We need at many different levels of talent and understanding. Some people are good at this, some people are good at that. We need to embrace and understand what we're dealing with. We must not throw the baby out or just run. And that is why, having talked about what the Casbolt experience was, he was being brought into an environment where they were doing certain things which were horrendous, which sent him off his reasoning. But they did that knowing what he was going to do. He was brought in there. They made a great deal of effort to bring him in there. And they then started to tell us about it. So there's a degree, as some of the people have been saying, they don't want a French Revolution style execution job on themselves. Maybe so we need to understand what's involved, because whatever got them in that situation could very well get us later on in the same situation. We must not have let's get these guys either by supreme consciousness and love and this, and eradicate them and dispose of them that way. We need to find out what's going on.
Compassion and understanding. That's what we need to approach it with, above all.
We need to understand what we're dealing with is totally lethal, and if we don't sort the problem, it's going to wipe us out. But we need to really fully understand the mechanism of what's involved here on all levels.
Who are the greatest experts on the planet on this subject, do you think?
I think the greatest experts on this planet on this subject will be completely unknown and be operating in total secrecy, because they cannot possibly expose themselves.
Exactly. And do you think, though, I mean, we're dealing with it's an energetic, is the solution energetic? I mean, do we have help from outside sources here? Because this is really, we're not we don't have our third spiral of DNA. We don't have not everybody has the capacity to I don't see people going around manifesting things before their eyes so quickly. So it looks like we're not exactly equipped to handle this. So what kind of help are we having? I've been hearing all kinds of reports that we have extra, there's benevolent sources here, because what happens here on Earth is going to affect, really the whole universe. And so what we have to put in perspective is maybe the hope, I think, that we need to enter into the conversation is who is helping us, not to say that there's so much we can do on our own, but because it does affect so much, that there's other people who are at stake, other civilizations who want to see this work out. What do you know about that?
We've got to stop crying into our milk and grow up and deal with this ourselves. Anything else can be manipulated as illusion and waste our efforts.
Well, I'm thinking...
We cannot stop. We've got to grow up. We can't ask Daddy anymore for help, and we can't ask Grandpappy anymore for help. We have to sort this problem. It's on our desk right now. We have to sort it. If there's any other people out there, or any other people in there, or any other higher consciousness, great. That's good. But we aren't going to make it if we keep putting off the solution that the cavalry's going to come in and save us, or somebody in a spaceship's going to come down and take us to La La Land, or some great guy with a beard and lots of shining light is going to come down in a cloud and fix us.
No,
we have to sort this in our own consciousness field and do it. That's the test. That's what we've got to deal with.
No, I completely agree with you, Miles, and I'm not by any means saying that we shouldn't take our own destiny in our own hands. That's clearly, but look, as I was saying, the ramifications of what happens on Earth here is not simply just going to affect humans and going to affect Earth. If we don't solve this problem, this infection will spread everywhere, and it will just become the greatest disease of...
You're quite right, Louisa. The thing is that there are so many different groups involved in this planet at the moment. They also must realize that they have a stake in this as well. It's exactly what you're saying. So everybody needs to wake up and smell the coffee.
I'm just thinking about this in terms of teamwork. I'm not saying that we should not be responsible. I'm saying that we need to work together as a team for everyone's benefit.
Absolutely.
But you've got to know who's on your team.
That's it. That's the... Very
and
good.
you can't have players on your team who, when it comes to kicking for that goal, are going to miss it.
Well, this is where we come back to, some of the, questions a lot of people have in the Ask of the Dragon family, and what their role is in terms of, making the shift and change to this new paradigm. And that there's, of course, the Dragon family's implementing, the ambassador could talk about this, the 555. And it seems like there's really a hierarchy of things that we can do to address this, because not everybody is human that we're dealing with who's making decisions on our behalf. And I think we should have a seat at this table. I've said this in the last GoldFish report, that humans, if there is a council, Corey Good, has been doing this disclosure series with David Wilcock. There's been a lot of, we had Randy Kramer on our show. Look, there's lots of information here. This is very complicated. This is not a simple thing. So when we try to put things into perspective, there's definitely supposedly a council, there's people making decisions and entities making decisions. And, because they feel humanity can't handle themselves, because they have to make the decisions for humanity. So on one hand, we have this one group saying, well, we have to take responsibility. We have to do it ourselves. And then we have this other group saying, well, they can't do it themselves, so we have to make decisions for them. I just find this extremely confusing, and maybe you can shed some light on that. Maybe the ambassador wants to as well. Go ahead.
Well, we're not dealing with an either-or situation. We're dealing with whatever works. And we're dealing with a parallel set of solutions which go to the same goal. What we mustn't do is say that, well, somebody else is going to win a race for us. And then our thought field intention collapses, and then that collapses somewhere else. We've all got to work together on this and accept the diversity and the needs of the dynamics of all life. Because sometimes a real badass can be the reason why somebody with good positive emotions or things gets motivated and does something. The one thing we can't do is fall into the trap of having complete universal conformity of everything's fine, because that's just as bad as having a stasis of all dynamics of the dynamics of existence.
Miles, would you agree that it would help if there was a greater awareness among the general public about this? Would you think that's necessary, or is it useless?
No, I think it's always very useful to have a greater awareness in general public. Certainly when you've got young teenage kids and little 5 or 6 year olds seem to know more about what's going on than we do, because whatever epigenetic processes our consciousness had 20 years ago in the previous 2 generations is coming through now. But what we have to do is that the people who feel that they're at the top and they're secure and they're going to get this and they're going to do that, they've got to realize that when push comes to shove, they're as broke as everybody else. And it's those button pushers, the button pushers of the instruments of what a lot of this, which is causing a lot of this, have got to realize
they're being manipulated too.
Who are being manipulated most. Yeah. They've got most to lose.
Yeah.
Right,
all right,
but
it's in their interest to get it out in the media, to release this information. It's in their interest too. That's what you're saying.
What's happening in the media is those people, and I've been pushing this in a subtle manner, those people who feel they're somehow isolated and secure, everything, the I'm all right Jack brigade are feeling uncomfortable now. And they need to know there's a reason for that. And the I'm all right Jack, you're screwed, we're okay, we're in our ivory tower. No, it doesn't work like that. Your ivory tower's got cracks in it.
Yeah. So if there's a message today, that's the message. They need to keep their asses into gear as well.
Yeah.
Well, just recently, Lance White, who has the Fireside Chat on BBS Radio, had Mary Rodwell on. And Mary Rodwell, I'm sure you know Mary, right?
Mary Rodwell is fantastic. I love her.
Yeah.
And don't cross her, right? She's fantastic. Okay.
Terrific. Well, we hope to have her on the GoldFish Report too. We've also invited.
Good day.
Yeah, and we've also invited Lance White onto the program. We've had to reschedule Lance. But one of the things that was really interesting that Lance had kind of brought out in his interview with Mary was that, you know, Mary has, for the viewers who don't know who Mary Rodwell is, Mary is a brilliant researcher. She's a former nurse, and she has been researching these children, the indigo, the crystal children, the rainbow children. And these are children who are coming in with their almost full memories of where they came from, their past incarnations. They recall different languages. They recall living on spaceships. They recall things that, you know, so they are coming in with this new set of, they're coming in with a new DNA. And what this is really revealing is, you know, what Lance said, and I thought was brilliant, you know, conclusion that he came to was, if there wasn't a certainty that we were going to succeed as humanity, these children wouldn't be coming in and wouldn't be able to be doing what they're doing. And do you have, what do you have, how do you respond to that?
These children, I mean, it's fascinating, you know, to meet them, and they know more. I mean, I'm not sure if I mentioned this story the last time. A little girl, and she was, she mustn't be more than about 4 or 5 years old. And she asked, where do we all come from? And she was very shy, and her father was, you know, she wants to talk to you. She knew that I knew that she knew. And it was a little dance that way. And she asked a question, and I says, we all come from outer space. We're all from other parts of the universe. And she knew that. So when these kids, the thing is, there's very dangerous things happening in England where they want to stop homeschooling, because they don't like this idea that these children can get educated. In Britain, there are people who are visiting schools from government agencies, that anybody who starts speaking like this, they've got to be registered, they've got to be nailed. So we've got a race to protect, we've got to try and protect these children and let them get through. And Mary's done a huge amount of work on this. And it's, a lot of these children know the first ones have already been coming through, and they've been, you know, falling, but they've been going into these labs, into these mental hospitals and things, and taking all this, whatever, these terrible things. Some of them have been taken out, you know, literally taken out. So we've got to, where our position is, we need to be dealing with the education authorities and the medical authorities. Excuse me, got to stop hitting these kids with this Ritalin and all these other drugs. Education authorities, ministers of education, headmistresses and whatever, they need to be told, look, excuse me, these kids are special. They're not a problem. They're a solution.
Right, Miles. I mean, isn't it that these kids are coming in, they're so bored. They're so bored because they already know this stuff, and they know far beyond it. And they're sitting there saying it doesn't work that way. And then they're looked at as troublemakers. They're looked at as, you know, and so this is the problem, is it not?
Yes, absolutely. And so the trouble, and people like Mary are, I mean, Mary has navigated herself through some of the most incredible prejudices in her home country and come out on top. She is absolutely one of the finest I've ever met. I'm really happy to know her, and she was here last year. These children are going to know they're going to have to fight. They've got a problem. They're going to be smart enough, but that doesn't stop us from protecting them. We've got to protect them. We've got to tell the education authorities. We've got to tell these people forcibly, or in a kind way, or whatever way that works. These children are special. They're a solution. Stop hurting them.
We have a huge amount of work to do, don't we?
Yeah. But you see, the way that the education system is, I mean, I was at a broadcast production base event in central London, and Channel 4, where this was an event where broadcasters explained how they do these types of programs. And it's the marshmallow test on 4-year-olds. You put a marshmallow, or in this case, you use chocolate, and you tell the 4-year-old children, and they're all on camera, that you're forbidden to take the chocolate. Okay? So what they do is they sit looking at the chocolate. They want to have the chocolate. They want to eat the chocolate. And what it is, it's a test on how these 4-year-olds can deal with their primary feelings. You fail the test and your life is written off forever if you are too in touch with your feelings. So they're specifically, so if you go and say, there's one girl, she says, I'm going to take the chocolate. She tells that to them, but she's been told you can't take the chocolate. She then actually told them we're going to take the chocolate, and she took the chocolate. Under the scientists who were running this program, that means that girl is a write-off for the rest of her life. She can't deal with her emotions and feelings. She'll never be a working, functional person in society. But we used to have a thing called the 11 plus in Great Britain, and they eventually got rid of it. This is much worse than that. They're doing tests on 4-year-old children. Yeah. Then they had tests on 6-year-old children who could construct a lie. And that lie, they wanted to check how ingenious they could lie about taking the chocolate.
But that's just their opinion, though. That's their opinion. That's not the opinion of the child necessarily. Or that's just society. You're saying,
the scientists say, we are scientists. We know what's happening. You don't. These children are write-off.
Well, this is a sign. They use that as a sign.
They're doing this with whole countries now.
Yeah. But they use that test as a sign of intelligence. If you can delay gratification, then that's a sign of intelligence. For those who need to take that gratification immediately, that's a sign of lesser intelligence, supposedly. I'm not saying I agree with this. I'm just saying that I think them explaining...
that's basically what the test is, yeah.
Yeah, and I think, there's some adults that still can't pass that test. I mean, I think it's all relative. Well, I'm not saying you, Steve. I'm just saying some people.
Well, I have to say, everybody who comes into this house of mine, I have a freezer full of Magnum chocolate bars, and I tell them where they are, and I tell them you're not allowed to eat it, and they defy my will and judgment and orders, and these things disappear.
Well, come on, chocolate is a little hard to resist. I think I might be tempted a bit on that one, but if you were to tell me there was, a bowl of spaghetti or something, I'm sure I could delay that a little bit because it doesn't hit the same, what do you call it, receptors, in the brain. It doesn't give you those endorphins. Okay, Rad, I see you've joined us, Rad. Do you have a question for Miles? Rad, a guest?
Well, I guess it's just, yes, I do. To me, that test is they're using they're saying one thing about what the results are as a cover. To me, it's really about they're testing for how people respond to authority. They're using the feelings and intelligence as telling the parents that's what we're looking for, but it's not that they could give a crap about that. They want to know, do they follow orders well, and that's a sign of rebellion, a sign of thinking by themselves. And as you say, people have to. I'm hoping that these children will elicit within their parents that people have to start looking at what the government is doing. And I mean, government has gotten away with taking away a lot of our sovereignty. I'm hoping that the children will be the one place where people kind of snap out of a little bit and go, no, I need to call the shots on my own child, not some governmental agency. But I mean, and it hasn't worked up until now. I mean, I see little responses, but now the control is getting so deep, and of course, taking away homeschooling. I'm just hoping something triggers in the parents that they need to question their government. I don't mean necessarily stand up, go into revolution, but they need to start questioning it a lot more.
The problem is, it's not the government. It's the insidious dogma of science. Science is doing this. Science advises the government. Science advises the government about radio waves and says Wi-Fi is safe or whatever because a scientist has said it. But the scientists are all bought in the universities because the fourth law of thermodynamics is do not lose your budget. That's the problem. The politicians haven't a clue how to use a cell phone. You have the Prime Minister of England wins an election and he's got an iPhone, and the Secret Service tell him, you better not use that phone, you need to use this other phone, which used to be a BlackBerry, because any Tom, Dick and Harry can hack a bloody iPhone. Yet the Prime Minister didn't realize that everything he was saying up until he was elected could have been hacked by any Tom, Dick and Harry, and that's how he got elected in the first place. But the scientists chose not to tell him that until after he's elected, because science has lost its ethic. It's now a dogma.
But but when you say, I mean, I understand what you're saying about it's science, not the government, but the money that science is dancing for comes from the government, doesn't it?
It comes from private corporations who bought the government and the universities. And then who is running the corporations? The corporations are not run by humans.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of, there's a lot of good sense to that comment, Radagast, and I think you can look at it both ways. But I think just from a researcher, because I'm trained in research, I'm looking at this as, there's a causal relationship. So I mean, they're immature. Children are immature, and they're not, really expected to make mature decisions like delaying gratification. So I think it's clever, very clever for you to suggest that this is a test about authority, because wouldn't it be great, Radagast, that they test the children early on and say, this kid's going to be a rebel and we don't want a rebel, so we're going to get rid of them. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant.
That's exactly what happened with Marie Kayali's daughter. She tried to get her child into the local schools, and because she was Irish Catholic, she had to go to the bishop and he had to go to the priest that was running the school, and they told her, your child is not suitable for this school because she showed creative individual tendencies, one of which was the Christmas tree. She was told to draw a tree, and she put something on the tree, a decoration, and because she put the decoration on the tree and there wasn't one on the tree she was told to paint, that showed that she had inventive creativity, and she rebelled against authority, and that child wasn't allowed to go to her local school. She had to go and find another school.
Well, we're coming up to an hour, and we have covered so much, and there's still so much to do. And I have to say, I think what I'd like to do is shift the focus back a little bit more on mind control and on this subject that you and Sergeant McMullen were talking about, and that was this third spiral of our DNA and what we can do to rebuild it. And he seems to think there's something available for us to rebuild it, something called God Salt. And I think you've also, and I've seen your wonderful interviews with Karen McDonald, and I've also invited her onto the GoldFish Report, and we're waiting to hear back from her because I know she's been traveling. And it just seems like this is something a lot of people don't know about. And can you share with us, what it is that we're talking about? What is this third spiral of our DNA?
Well,
what happened to it? Why do we not have it? And how can we get it back? And
we should have had it. We should have had it. Everything that's stable. I mean, this is a tripod. It's the most stable, that's the most fundamentally stable thing in the reality we're in. 2 legs, it falls over, 3 legs, it's stable. Now that means that if you have 3 spirals, everything works in 3s, including London buses. So the third arm is clearly being engineered out of our DNA. The stubs are there. Now, Amanda Brackett, I was hoping to get into the detail of that. Brad knows Amanda very well, and it just so happens that the computer I was dealing with that has been hacked. Right now, a 2 terabyte drive with a lot of the stuff on it. I'm doing a data recovery on that. It's still working. So the mechanism that I would like to discuss, I can't discuss because I don't know, because it's stuck on a corrupted hard drive.
Okay, so, but what he is...
That's the fundamental elements of the existence that we're in. 3s work. Groups of 3 work. So, for instance, a 3-cylinder car works. 5-cylinder car doesn't, because the resonances and the mathematics are incompatible, and you can build dampers into that mathematics. You can build dampers into that to make it work stable, but in the long run it will fail. So that is, if we did grow back our third spiral, or energetically re-imprint that image of the spiral, and that's what Amanda was looking at. They were looking at ways in the DNA of doing that, but at the same time they're looking at how to actually make it worse, how to destabilize it. So we've got people or creatures working to specifically engineer down to that resonant harmonic structure. And it's all down to resonances, and that can be mathematically regrown. You can re-image that. You can extrapolate what's needed to be there to make that. If you can work out what the tune is, you can put in the extra notes to make the tune work. And that's what you got to look at. You got to look at the harmonic relationship that the others work at and see what bit's missing. And that should be that should be something that we can work on.
We just need musicians then to solve the problem, don't we?
It's in the music. The ancient music contains it in the subtlety of the violin.
Right. And isn't that though why the church wanted to, the church took control, as it did everything, of music and the music composition. And, that's why the Gregorian chant was extremely restricted in terms of what intervals were allowed in succession. So the rules of voice leading were all designed.
Yeah.
So, and it's a miracle that, Bach and Mozart, anybody could, create such incredible music with such limitations in the structure of rule. It's also my background as well, and Steve's as well. Steve's a musician as well, and Radagast. So, the interesting thing is that we're talking about relationships, the golden mean. We're talking about bringing this concept of the golden mean in, especially when it comes to music. Because if you do an analysis on Mozart's music or anybody's good music, you'll always find the golden mean in something significant really happening at that point, or capitulation or some kind of thing that's happening within the music, the structure of the composition itself, and it's all related to the.
Don't listen to it on a computer, because the computer destroys those harmonics. The computer, the compressed music, will give an algorithm which it's not quite the right thing acoustically that you want to hear. And the more music I hear, which from the 50s, old rock and roll, 60s music, the more times I hear it, they're slowing the beat down, they're slowing the backbeat down, they're changing the tones, the subtones of the music, actually changing old 60s hits from 50s to 60s hits that were in vinyl, or even 70s. They're actually changing that music off tone, slightly different beat. You can hear it.
Well, that's why concert pitch is 440, but we know that 432 is really is more in resonance, and it's more in tune with our own energetic vibrations. It's more resonant, I should say. So, so the benefit, though, I am trained in music, and I certainly prefer playing an acoustic piano than an electric piano. So for me, the experience of the music is it almost like recalibrates my own frequency.
Well, if you expose yourself to pure music in the right, if you add that, third DNA can be regrown back if you expose yourself in acoustic wave patterns of the full harmonic. I don't know what that is.
We can heal ourselves vibrationally through music. So the main thing is that we're being blasted everywhere we go with these frequencies. So the whole of humanity, basically.
Yeah.
So that has to be
flooding. They're flooding our whole environment with toxic harmonic energies, so they can actually attack our DNA.
Yeah. So the answer is to compose music, and that is of a higher frequency vibration, that is more resonant, that is in the 432 tuning, because not the well-tempered system, but we need to get back to understanding our nature as frequency and vibration.
Yes.
Yeah.
Get those numbers right, and
right.
I'll grow hair back.
Right, guess. Did you have any comments? We're getting close to an hour, and I want to ask everybody. I know Sanjay hasn't had a chance to jump in yet. Did Sanjay have you awake? Poor guy. He's in a different time zone.
I had something to say about music.
Yeah, Sanjay's always in a different time zone, and we, appreciate you joining us. And he always is the one. He's the outlier, and he's the one, all the way at the far end of the bell curve here in terms of time zones. And he's always the one having to make the sacrifice. So appreciate you joining us, Sanjay. Did you? I know Radagast had a comment, but let me go to Radagast.
Let Radagast go first.
Okay, go ahead, Rad.
As Louisa mentioned, I am a musician, and I found out about the 432 tuning in 2010. And when I experimented with it, I immediately felt the rightness of it, the correctness of it. Not to mention, it opened up my as soon as I went in and I strummed a chord, all of a sudden it seemed like the sounds of the universe started pouring into my head because I had tapped into the right frequency. And so since 2010, I have been writing and composing all my music in 432. Anything that comes out from me as a form of music is in 432, because I believe it's up to the musicians to be awake enough and make that change so that as they play music for society, they're providing some kind of healing or correction through the music that they play. And similarly, I also agree with you, a lot of the remakes. I mean, the basic rock and roll beat isn't the most evolved of all beats, but it's not regressive. Where the hip hop rhythm that came in later, that they're now redoing a lot of music, is a regressive. It's a devolutionary rhythm, and it's been embraced in almost all styles of music, with the exception of classical music for the most part, and classical rock and roll. And again, I think it's meant to not only stop us in our tracks, but to move us backward. It's pretty sad. I mean,
go ahead.
There's a certain shrillness of the acoustics of the vocals as well. But in dance music, they had to use pure vocalists. A lot of techno dance music and trance music only worked when you had a pure vocal. They frequently would pick a folk singer to do the vocals, which I find very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So this has been quite a discussion. Let me go to Sanjay, because you haven't had a chance, Sanjay, to say anything. So why don't you jump in, my friend? Unmute.
See, sometimes when people are talking, someone needs to listen to. We don't have some. Look,
fair enough.
With music, especially, we talk about mind control and all sorts of different things, but with music, it is the true food for the soul, right? Depression, right? I've seen this, I've experimented this with some people where they're down and out. There's certain music you can turn on, and their whole attitude and their whole outlook and everything just changes, right? So the power of music, right, is so powerful, it's not funny. And you guys, three of you are musicians, right? Radagast, Steve, and Louisa. You guys should be doing something actively with other musicians to, you guys are aware of it. People need to be aware, because depression and stuff like this, dark music, right? That is one of the biggest sources of mind control, right?
Yeah.
They put all this crap into you, right? So I believe that is one of the first things, with music is a gift. It's like, wow, God gave us 2 ears, or the Creator gave us 2 ears so we could listen. And music is one of the best things. The rhythm, the frequency. We talk about our soul, right? Our body is not existing, it's not real. But the whole frequency, the sine waves and stuff, the whole universe is music. And yet over here, we knowingly let the music companies and all these other people change the frequency to mess with it.
You're absolutely right.
One of God's gifts.
You're right, and for people, it's a blessing, because I think you're more sensitive, and I don't normally talk about my personal experience, but I will for just a moment. When I was studying, I studied music theory and composition at the Juilliard School, and as I studied there, one of the things that I was investigating was, how is music a language? And so I did a whole analysis of this, and when I left there, I thought, the answer was in linguistics. If you're going to really assess whether this is a language, you have to understand what language is. So I went into linguistics to understand, and then the more I studied linguistics, the more I said, this is not this has nothing to do with language in a sense. This is far beyond this. This is the way our mind organizes sound. And then, so I went into psychology, and then that's how I ended up in research. But the answer still had to go further into physics. So, as I was on this quest, really, I was on this research journey to kind of understand what is this? So obviously, it's a universal. It's funny because on Facebook, we get messages from different people, different languages. You can click the translate button. But the minute I post, a Bach partita, there's no translation necessary. Everybody understands that. And there's absolutely no translation necessary. So that goes to tell us that our fundamental nature is vibration, and that there is linguistics in music. There's syntax. There is pragmatics. There's dialogue analysis you can do on music. So it is very languid. It's because the way we understand and organize, the way our brains are wired to understand, for language particularly, but also mathematics, because it's a rule-based system. Because the music, Western music, is rule-based. And one of the things that I did discover was, regardless of what culture, these different Indian music, tribal music, there were relationships between that music and the culture, the language of the culture. So the rules of the language had something very much in common with the rules that were used for generating the music of that culture. It's just the most phenomenal thing. And there's lots of books on this, the Mozart effect. There's lots of people who studied this. But there's a lot of biological foundations to music. And this is, hopefully we're saying that, and now Steve is an opera singer, and I can tell you that there's some music that Steve has sung that I absolutely had, like, I saw geometric shapes, because his resonance was that precise, and it was absolutely beautiful. And no one's heard Steve's, they should look him up and listen and buy some albums. But that's not what we're doing here. And it's really phenomenal when you're really a master at that trade, of that resonance, especially of the human voice. It's really absolutely amazing. And I think everybody could agree that when you go to a concert and you listen to Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, once, or any choral, any live vocal performance, if they're good musicians, it's just exalting. I mean, there's nothing, your soul is exalted, and people describe it that way. And so I just wanted to, I wanted to ask both Steve and Miles to comment on that. How about Steve first?
Well, I don't have anything to add. I agree completely. I think that, first of all, I think the language of music that we've invented is basically its grammar. We're adding grammatical rules onto sound, and the way we apply grammar has an outcome. But the only thing I would like to add is that intention is important. The intention behind creating something has probably the greatest effect, I think. Of course, the mechanics in between the delivery, between delivering it and the result, has an effect too, but I think the intention behind it. So if I'm working with music, I think the intention, even if I'm working with great music or even average music, the intention behind it will have, for me, the greatest visible and the greatest effective feeling that I see when I send it out into the universe. But my final question to Miles is: do these beings that are taking over everything, do they have a name?
Names are, I don't like giving names, but it's the music, the intention. When you mention music and intention, that it's always amazed me why there was so much hostility to broadcasting in this country. Any kind of music, and it's the music and the thought intention which can be carried to invigorate and enliven other people. So you play the music, and your thoughts and intention, your lovingness can go out through that. And yes, we had a radio station called Radio Caroline, and they called it Loving Awareness. And well, they tried to take it, they took them off the air. So.
Well, I agree, and just so for sake of knowing, Steve and I have been working on this project to create this high resonance music that will help raise frequencies on the planet. And one of these days, we're going to get it done, aren't we, Steve? We've been 4,000 miles away, and we've been working on. We have a few songs written already that are absolutely for this purpose. And it's a pet project that we have. That
we'll keep an analog and use valves.
What's that? Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Don't worry, I'm onto it. I'm onto it.
I'll have to get my reel to reel out. I've got my reel to reel.
I'm onto it. Don't worry, I'm onto it.
Yeah.
So Sanjay, you have your hand up. I wanted to see if you had a question and see if the ambassador also wanted to.
When Steve said when we're creating, it kind of appeared. Music is something we think we're creating, but music is all around us and always around us. Music is what actually, as you said, you know, you went into this research and physics and mind. Music is the true numbers, and it's all around us and it's constantly changing. The musicians merely just take that and like amplify it so that the world understands it, because numbers are there, but not everyone understands numbers. The mathematicians make it easy for people to understand. So, like the soul, like just say if there was no instruments, right? Because we talked about instruments, the birds, the nature, the water flow, all that is constantly playing music that no one's creating apart from the creator and the creation. It is like, wow, awesome, especially when you're meditating and stuff like that.
I would agree with you, Sanjay. How I see it is that I see that what we're reacting with our creator. When we create music, we're reacting to the creator, we're being with the creator, and we're delivering the voice of the creator through us. We're interacting with the universe.
Well, I kind of look at it as channeling, quite honestly. It's like I feel like I'm channeling the creator when I'm composing, because I have the skills and the education and training to craft it, but the inspiration has to come from that right side hemisphere. It has to come as a channel. It comes in as energy. And it's very interesting because, you know, people who are artistic are very misunderstood. We're very sensitive. But we have to be, because if you want to express something, you know, you have to be have a sensitive nature to do that. And you know, I think that that we'll see what happens. Does the ambassador want to jump in and have a comment here?
No, I think the discussion has been very well today. It's always a pleasure to have Miles on. We have to have him more as a frequent guest. You know,
I'm honored.
Yeah, it's always nice to hear him and what he has to say and share to all of us. And I just wanted to ask a last question to Miles before we end this program, and it's that what is your take on the coming year and you know, especially 2017?
Well, I feel that we've got a tremendous opportunity to pass on to our young people the joys of a wonderful and beautiful planet and a beautiful world. And as the ever-increasing weaknesses in the so-called controllers who seem to be finding that they're not standing with the rest of us, that it's time for them to know that they can't get away with it. And they're going to have to live up to their responsibilities and suffer the consequences of their decisions. But we're going to do that in a peaceful way and a loving way, but we've got to do it. We've got to not let somebody else do it for us. We have to engage in our responsibilities and make it known to those in the relevant areas of power that you can't get away with killing everybody, hating everybody, and destroying everything. And that's it.
Thank you very much, Miles. Is there anyone else that has final words to say, or should we round it up for today?
Yeah, I think, Radagast, did you have, why don't we just ask everybody to have a closing comment? Because I'll tell you, Miles, we never know. When we have you join us, it seems like we never know where this conversation's going to go. And it was so, we just went to such a delightful place. And I think it was such a wonderful place to kind of wrap up our very heavy conversation about mind control, was on the subject of music and how lovely it is. And thank you so much for bringing that to us. So let me see.
I plan everything to every precise detail. I've got it all written in front of me here.
You're methodical.
Yeah.
Radagast, did you have some closing comments you wanted to say?
Yeah, I just want to thank Miles, and especially for taking it into the, about the conversation of music and the power of it, because that's something that I'm working with currently. I realized it, but now I'm really working with it. And so I feel pleased to be part of the front, moving things forward with good music and again, with the frequencies that are going to help people to kind of get centered to, I guess I was thinking when I was first doing it, saying, the 432, it's music that is good down to your shines.
I'm sorry, we're having some audio problems with Radagast. Radagast, I think we might have actually lost you. Steve, I'll pick up on Radagast when he comes back. Did you want to pick this up, Steve?
Yeah, sure. Thanks again for being with us, Miles. It's always a pleasure. Yes, I agree with everything you say. We're all in the same boat. As soon as the controlling groups realize that we're all in the same boat, I think the sooner we'll all move forward. And the final thing I'd like to say is that I think not just music, but everyday intention and everything you do has an effect on everything. So I think the kindness that you show to somebody, that a blind person needs to cross the street, pick up something that somebody's dropped, it all has an effect. It's the intention behind it. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Very nice. Sanjay, did you have some closing comments you want to make?
Just, music, as I said, is the soul, and we got to maybe look into the wind chimes that people hang outside the front of their houses, what frequencies they're tuned at, and bells. People have bells and stuff, because Miles said that, how he controlled, you said you complimented him that how he finished in the right spot. He said, he planned it. See, that's another way of mind control that we plan. So it's very smart how they do this to us. We don't realize it.
He's brilliant. That's why we have him on the show.
Well, I think just when Rad's signal went distorted there, I think perhaps I had a thought that perhaps we might be dealing with something that's trying to communicate with us, but the signal's distorted and we're just seeing a bad side. And maybe this is why I feel we should try and embrace what we're dealing with here, and try to understand what's happening, but recognize that what's happening is if we don't, we've really got to focus on keeping this planet, this beautiful place, the way it should be, beautiful.
And Radagast, thanks, Miles. You're absolutely right. We have to, or we don't really have, the alternative is not good. Radagast, did you want to finish? We don't know what happened there, but please finish your comment.
I'm not.
Pardon?
No, I just, wanted to thank Miles. I just wanted to thank Miles for bringing up the subject of music, because music has now become a real focus of mine. I've been a musician all my life, but I kind of left it for a while. But once I discovered the different tuning and got re-inspired, and then also now finding musicians who will play in that tuning with me. And so it's kind of fun to be on the vanguard of trying to create a different world through vibration.
That's it, Radagast. It's about peace. And, again, I think Miles is right with this term. Actually, the ambassador coined this today, to embrace what it is that we're dealing with and working against. Because it doesn't have, as you said, Miles, it's not a co-creator, is it? Is this a sub-creator level, or this is not a co-creative ability? And that's what makes us humans, I think, so wonderful, is that we have a spark of the creator within us. We are creators. We are co-creative. That's why the music resonates with us so much, because it's creative. We can create. We can recalibrate our resonance, and that's why with the concept of music, like I think it was Radhika or Sanjay said, if you're in a gloomy mood, my theory on that was basically you match your mood with the vibration of the music that you're in, and you raise the vibration of the music, so you change songs as you process that vibration, that issue or dilemma you're dealing with. you change songs, and that raises your vibration, that recalibrates you to a higher level, and on and on and on. And that's been my own personal therapeutic technique I've used, is, you know, to bring yourself out of it. Sometimes you have to start by matching it. So you put a song on that kind of brings that out. It's not that you're dwelling on it. You're synchronizing, and you're trying to process on a vibrational level. So it's not only psychological or emotional, it's a vibrational level that we're trying to recalibrate and our resonance with. And so, but the ambassador's idea of embracing this, I think, is really the message, and that Miles has
I think if there's one word, embrace.
Embrace. I want to thank the ambassador. If you have any final comments, Ambassador, I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, so I again want to rewrite that we're very happy to have you in mind. So hope to see you soon again. And it was a great show. And thank you very much, everyone, to participate. And I hope that it gets some clear sense for someone, and that we'll continue this battle against ignorance in all shape or forms we can. Okay, with that, I want to say this is the end of this GoldFish report.
Well, I want to thank Miles very, very much for joining us today. We just, you know, we went to places we didn't expect, and you just had a phenomenal report today. I want to, you know, remind our viewers that you can contact, we're going to put our Miles' contact information in the description section of this video, so you can follow Miles in the Basis Project and the interviews that he does, because he's trying to bring this groundbreaking information to us. And we also want to let everybody know that one of the initiatives that the ambassador has began here is what's called Love for All, Hatred for None Day, which is going to be on January 31st, and you can follow that on Facebook at the Global Mission of Peace, Love for All, Hatred for None Day. That's on Facebook, and you can find out what that's all about. It really is about, you know, ultimately it is about raising consciousness too. It's about embracing love and putting our differences aside, so that we can come together and collectively and consciously raise our vibrations. And it's a wonderful initiative, and we want to thank the ambassador for starting that. We also want to say, you know, please follow us on our Facebook page at the GoldFish Report. We also have our WordPress blog, the GoldFish Report at wordpress.com. And of course, we want to thank all of our viewers for watching. And again, this concludes this edition of the GoldFish Report.